Today I saw someone at the gym who reminded me that people can completely rebuild themselves. So basically, I was at the gym today and I was working out chest and triceps, as you can tell, right? But I looked over to my right because I was working out with my friend, and while I was doing my workout, I looked over and there's this really overweight guy who's probably 300 pounds, I'm not trying to diss him in any way, but he was really going hard at working out, and I could almost like feel a sense of deep motivation and a desire to lose all of his weight that I haven't really sensed from a lot of people in a while, right? But he was like, you could see it in his eyes and soul that he was like determined, right, to get through every single rep and every single exercise and every single set, right? But yeah, what stood out wasn't necessarily the weight. It was just like his complete drive to, improve and to get better and ultimately, lose the weight. But he looked like someone who was basically tired of losing to himself over and over again, right? And we all fall victim to this, right? You could constantly fall into bad habits or do stuff you're not necessarily proud of over and over and over again. And you just get to the point where you're so tired of losing, you're so tired of doing something bad that you're not proud of, right? That you eventually just say, enough's enough. I'm going to try from here on out. I may fail sometimes, right? But the second point I want to get across here is that some people, this kind of goes back to what I was just saying, will reach like a breaking point, right? There's a moment where, the pain of being so comfortable in something, for example, like being fat's probably really comfortable because you can eat whatever you want. You don't have to work out. And in that sense, it's really comfortable, right? But it's the most uncomfortable thing to walk around, 250 pounds, 300 pounds overweight and just look out of shape, right? You have no self-confidence whatsoever or external confidence from like other people, or basically self-confidence, right? So that comfort starts to turn into pain, right? And it starts to compound. One of two things is going to happen, right? You're not going to do anything about it, and you're just going to accept it and be, unconfident with yourself, and you're going to continue to get worse, right? And I'm not saying this to criticize fat people. I'm saying this in a sense to give fat people, or whatever it may be, everybody has like a vice that, they struggle with. For me, it's other things instead of weight, right? But I struggle with different things, and it's good to constantly, reflect on how you're doing and if you're truly improving or not, right? But yeah, basically, pain. Once you experience enough pain in the comfort of just getting tired of something, one of two things is going to happen. Or let's say we have Jeff over here. I'm just making these people up, right? We have Jeff and Todd, right? Jeff's mindset is that, he's gonna, just keep accepting it because that's just who he is. He's fat. He doesn't want to do anything about it, right? He knows he's probably going to gain some more weight and it's going to be really bad for his health, right? But he's just going to keep continuing his ways of eating unhealthy, of not going to the gym, gaining more weight, right? Now you have Todd, right? I think that's what his name was, right? You have Todd who's knows he's fat, right? And he's been picking up these bad habits and developing these bad habits over the course of 2 to 3 years. He's gained like 150 pounds, right? He's severely overweight, but he's just tired of seeing himself fat and other people viewing him as fat, obviously, right? So he's going to decide to make a change, right? But he dug himself into a very, very deep hole. I'm not referring to the guy at the gym. Maybe he did, right? I feel like everybody digs himself into holes, but the most important thing is identifying it, but also identifying that you dug yourself into that hole, right, with your certain vice, and then trying to build yourself out of that hole and almost create like a mountain-like sense with that dirt in like an analogy sense, if that makes sense, right? So you have to first accept that, you're not at the average standpoint of the average human, but you should never strive for being average because the average human is, overweight, right? They have no goals, ambitions, or anything anything going on with their life. The average person, right? But when you're overweight or when you're behind in categories with these vices, right? Vices meaning like bad habits or like bad things that you're not proud of that you keep doing over and over again. For example, that'd be, being addicted to drugs, being overweight, different stuff like that, right? And if like, I lost my train of thought, but yeah, you have to first identify that, you're already behind, right? And that you're making negative progress and you're just getting worse and worse with that vice. A vice is a bad thing, obviously, right? But that you need to now try to put in as much work as you can to try to dig yourself out of that hole. No matter how big that hole is, you truly can if you just keep putting compounding work. I have this book that I mentioned, I think, in one of my videos recently called The Compound Effect. It's based on science and philosophy, right? It's called, or like the title's basically just Master the Hidden Science of Small Wins That Multiply into Life-Changing Income, Success, and Personal Transformation, right? And this is actually a scientific law, and basically what it's saying, the compound effect, if you're not familiar with it, right, it's that if you put in small work every single day, quality small work every single day, over a long period of time, that will amount to something super successful or something super negative. So that's what a vice is, right? When you're doing small little things over time, yes, that's going to negatively impact you. But now you have to identify, oh, I went wrong here. Now I have to go the complete opposite direction just to catch up where I should be. And then I have to go even further if I want to have even more self-confidence, or if I want to just be fulfilled in a certain category like my health, right? And that's essentially what the compound effect is, okay? And yeah, so people just reach a breaking point, or they either just accept it and keep, giving into their vice and making negative compound effect, right? And it's very rare that people usually just stay in the same exact spot that they are, right? But yeah, one more thing about talking point number 2, which is some people just reach a breaking point, right? Is that people, they start to transform because they cannot tolerate their current reality anymore, right? They just essentially get tired of it. So they want to, make improvements, and they want to, change their weight or change their mindset, which I'm trying to do by, consuming, by consuming psychology and making these videos. I've realized that my brain, my psyche is so cooked and beyond cooked that that's honestly my vice, and I'm trying to catch up the baseline and then go even further, if that makes sense. My dog just ran past me, but walked past me, but that would be like a vice for me that I'm trying to fix and then get way ahead of my standards, right? And yeah, that's just a multitude of a vice. I know I'm spamming that word, but it's a perfect representation of the word, or of like the meaning of what I'm trying to get across here in point number 2. But yeah, that would be essentially my vice. Okay, now on to point number 3, which is humans dig holes for themselves slowly. And basically, if you're not familiar with what I mean by holes, which I hope you are already in this video, because it's been how long? 8 minutes already, right? A hole is basically like, I'm putting this as a metaphor, right? Or not a metaphor, and it might be the same thing. I need to increase my vocabulary, so I need to read more. But I'm putting this as an analogy, right? Basically, a hole in my analogy is you're digging a hole that equals like a negative vice and a negative compound effect, like you doing something bad, like you eating terribly and just like gaining weight. That's the only thing I can refer to. I don't know why right now, but or that could be like even depression, addiction, isolation, self-hatred, right? Or just poor habits. A multitude of, examples right there. I could finally come up with some, right? But yeah, humans don't know, like 99% of the time, you're subconsciously over time digging a hole for yourself for a specific thing. Yeah, whether that's weight gain, depression, addiction, isolation, self-hatred, or poor habits, right? Or anything else, right? That's negative for you. And you're not going to notice a big difference at all on week 1, even maybe month 1. You might see a slight difference, right? In what your reality looked like before. But day 1, you're obviously not going to know anything. But then you wake up 6 months later and you're like, how did I get here, right? Because that's the law of the compound effect, right? You did all of this negative work that amounted to something very negative. So now what you have to do, like I explained in step 2, is catch up to baseline and then get ahead, okay? And back to the guy at the gym, right? He was intentionally trying to get back to baseline, and hopefully he tries to get ahead, because that would obviously be beneficial for him, right? And everyone else who tries to pursue what he's trying to do too, which is like lose weight and get in shape, right? But yeah, essentially, yeah, you could just see he was motivated to, and just motivated, like eternally motivated to not lose anymore, right? And a lot of times the most successful people, or the people who actually win, are the people who hate to lose instead of the people who love to win, right? Because if you hate to lose, that means that, you'll try to do anything you can to not lose, right? You'll put in a bunch of work. It essentially stems from trauma or bad habits or frustration, right? And that could go back to the bad vices, okay? And that also can go back to enough is enough, where like humans just get tired of being in the reality that they're in, right? So, yeah. Man, I completely forgot what I was gonna say. But yeah. What I was gonna say is that humans naturally dig themselves into these holes, right? And then they slowly become. This is very important, right? They slowly become someone they never planned to be. And if you're like that right now, my advice to you would to be first recognizing what you did to get to that position and understanding that you can change, but it's going to be a lot of work and you're going to want to quit so many times, right? And that's really where, just determination comes in, of you just saying enough's enough. Even when I feel like, eating 10,000 calories today, I'm only going to eat 2,000, right? I don't know how many people watching this video is actually consuming 10,000 calories, but please stop if you are. But yeah, nobody really wakes up one day and suddenly like ruins their life. Like I said, it happens very quietly and it happens over time, like the compounding effect. Okay, now on to an example of this, okay? I'm going to use David Goggins here, right? He is a guy who is in super good shape. Some people would say he's like mentally insane and that he's taking it way too far. And I would somewhat agree with that, but not entirely, right? He has gotten to the point where he is running ultra marathons. He's a Navy SEAL, or he was a Navy SEAL. He did a bunch of stuff in his later adulthood, right? That took so much, self-discipline and willpower and just brutal, like, body condition and everything, like mentally conditioned, right? He was like one of the best Navy SEALs to ever exist in terms of willpower, right? And obviously that's like one of the hardest things to do in the world. And he's probably like 1 in a billion out of all the people, that come by in terms of applying himself to doing stuff he doesn't want to do. And I say this because he used to be 350 pounds, severely overweight, severely insecure, right? He was abused as a child and he let that get the best of him, right? And he thought he would just be working his dead-end job for the rest of his life, where he made $1,000 spraying cockroaches for a living, right? And eating milkshakes, getting fatter and fatter and fatter, right? But he realized after a couple of weeks, he realized one day after like spraying for cockroaches, right? Yes, I watched the podcast, if you've watched it too, right? That enough is enough and that he had to make a change, right? Because he was just essentially tired of his 26 years of existence, right? Being so fed up with every single, bad vice that he's compounded over time, okay? And that's what I want to install in your guys' mind with this video. If you only remember one point from this video, I know I've been talking all over the place, please remember this. I'm trying to keep my video structured so I have like different bullet points I have to go through. No, I'm not scripting anything, okay? But this goes back to my main point of the video being, you are not stuck as a person you became. And he was the best example in the world or ever who, followed that, saying, which is, yeah, you're not stuck as a person you became. Because think about it now, he's completely on the other like end of the spectrum versus who he used to be. Nobody would ever, if they didn't know his backstory, think those two were the same people, right? They would never think that, right? If they had a conversation with them, if they heard them on TV, whatever it may be, if they didn't know the backstory, they would not identify those people. And if you're able to completely change your identity and just like who you are, what you believe, what you do, and everything about you, then yeah, you're not stuck at your current self, right? Forever. You can definitely change that. And it will take a lot of time. It will take a lot of work. It's not going to happen in a month. The thing about our generation and society today is they want everything instantly. So yes, you will stay the same person or even get worse if you just expect everything to happen to you instantly and all the rewards to come in straight away. And I even expect that a lot of times, which I hate doing that. So I'm going to try to stick to stuff and see it through more. So please do that too. Okay, on to talking point number 5, right? When I was at the gym, back to the story, right? I only saw this guy for like a minute or two, right? But it really like inspired me because he had this drive in his eyes, almost like in his soul too, that he wanted to get out of his vice, right? He wanted to get out of the hole he was digging. It was deep, right? It was deep because he was pretty overweight, no disrespect, right? But I believe that he will shed all of it, and get in good shape if he, still has that, intrinsic motivation and, drive that I saw in him today, right? And I really wanted to say something encouraging to him or, at least just like say, hey, man, you're putting in good work, right? But I was in the middle of a set and I was trying to find him afterwards, but I couldn't find him. So unfortunately, I couldn't say anything to him, and I really regret that. But if I see him again, this is a promise to the viewers watching, okay? I'll try to say something like that because he is in the mentality, I assume, that yes, he doesn't necessarily care about winning. He's just so fed up of losing, right? And even if he inflicted that upon himself, he's just tired of making those decisions in the past over and over again of resulting in a negative outcome of being overweight. So he's just so ready to win. And even just like giving someone a really small piece of, inspiration or motivation can help somebody go or help somebody, work out when they don't feel like it or help somebody do something when they don't feel like it on a certain day, right? So I kind of wish I did that, or I do wish I did that. But yeah, you guys keep me accountable. I'll tell you guys, right? Just keep asking me in the comment sections of new videos. And I will let you guys know if I see him or not, and then I will try to give him that inspiration, even if it's just like a one sentence, like, hey man, I see you putting in the work, it's gonna result in something big, right? Okay, I think I'm gonna end that off here now since we're at 18 minutes, but I wanna leave you guys off with something, right? Some people aren't trying to win, they're just trying not to lose anymore because they're so fed up with losing, right? Thank you guys for watching this video. Please make sure to like, subscribe, share this content. Please comment anything. I will respond to it as long as it's like philosophical or just like related to this topic or even unrelated to this topic. Really appreciate you guys watching. Thank you. I'll see you in the next video. That's my thoughts.